In this video, you will find a list of little-known historical facts, or close enough, that are both interesting and useful. If your version of useful is having a random fact to pull out during awkward conversations or encounters with goats. I'm Gareth from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 historical facts you should know, but probably don't. Number 10. Hitler was a fan of the white powder, and more. Hitler had way more issues than the sum of his reproductive glands. He was far more concerned with getting his next hit. From records and testimonies, it is generally accepted that Hitler was probably a raging, in more ways than one, junkie. Adolf was said to have been fed a cocktail of drugs by his personal physician Theodor Morell for several years. Morell was trusted by Hitler, even if he wasn't by anyone else. It is said that he was practically always by Hitler's side, assisting him with every task. But really, he was waking him up with injections of methamphetamine, providing him with cocaine during the day, and helping him to relax and sleep in an evening with opiates. The Germans have historically been good pharmacists, and invented many of the medications we frequently take. But perhaps this interest in drugs was taken a tad too far. Number 9. St. Nicholas beat someone up over the Trinity. Yeah, that guy, Santa himself. If about half of the sources are to be believed, our man Nick attended the Council of Nicaea, which was called by Constantine, the Emperor of Rome. Why was the council called? Because someone, the Bishop of Alexandria in Egypt, said that God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit were three separate things. And this caused all sorts of problems. People started agreeing with him, and that's when it really started kicking off. Constantine soon realized religion was quite a complicated matter, and in a Jerry Springer move, he invited the battling parties to Nicaea to sort things out. The event went down as you would expect, and the two factions turned violent on a number of occasions, firmly believing that what they thought was right. Shock, I know. This is where St. Nicholas comes in. He firmly believed that the Trinity, as they called it, represented one thing, and it was his duty to beat the living snot out of those who thought otherwise. His side won, but as you would expect, the other side only pretended to see the light and swiftly began preaching their way again. Number 8. The first English king to speak English was Henry IV. I'll get this out of the way from the start before I start getting emails from any pedants. By this, I of course mean after 1066 and the victory of William the Conqueror. Of course, the Anglo-Saxon kings spoke English as it was their language. That said, it still took from 1066 to 1399 for English to be the first language of a monarch. English kings and Empress Matilda didn't really have a fondness for English, and it wasn't considered as important as French for centuries in the royal courts. Richard the Lionheart, that English icon, couldn't really speak English and spent very little time on the island of Britain. You may be asking, why him? Why now? The short answer is that Henry IV wasn't brought up to be a king and therefore spoke English as a preference. That's right, it took someone not expecting to go far for them to speak English. He gained the throne through conquest and therefore was not conditioned for the role. Number 7. Fanta was invented for Nazis. Calling Fanta a Nazi drink is a bit strong, I've got to say. Factually speaking though, Fanta was invented to quench the German thirst for soft drinks during that period. To put it simply, the German people were enthusiastic consumers of Coke. The drink, well, unless you're Hitler. And as it became difficult to import original Coca-Cola, there grew a need to provide an alternative. Coke were quick to assess the situation and consider what the Germans had, and came up with that refreshing orangey yellow liquid we all know and love. Number 6. Everyone is inbred, and more recently than you think. Most people assume we're inbred to some extent. There are a number of reasons for this, but the two main ones are that your grandparents double each generation you go back. It doesn't take long to count back and have more grandparents than people who have ever existed. The other reason is that some people are just very, very randy. One of those people is Genghis Khan, who apparently fathered a ridiculous amount of children as he created his huge empire. His randy antics mean that now about 35% of Mongol men share a Genghis Khan chromosome, which means over 1/3 of men in an entire nation can link themselves to this historic figure. Further to that though, it is estimated that around 1 in 200 men are related to Genghis Khan today across the world, which would make around 0.5% of men related to just one man who existed 800 years ago. Number 5. Many countries are far younger than you think. You know those famous historical European countries with deep, rich histories which have existed forever? Yep, well, most of them haven't. I feel like we all just assume Germany and Italy have always been there, either in their current form or near enough, especially with their prominent places in history. The reality, in fact, though, is that both examples are merely as young as 150 years old or thereabout. This makes Italy and Germany younger than steam engines and mainstream newspapers. The youth of these countries may not seem all that impressive to some, but just to put things into context, Italy is only 28 years older than Nintendo, and Germany is only 18 years older. Number 4, 3 presidents of the United States have won a Grammy Award. I can't really remember the first time I heard this one, but at first, I thought some presidents had made jazz albums in their old age, and they realized their real dream before it was too late. Instead though, these Grammys have all been for spoken word. But unfortunately, this doesn't mean the rap kind of albums that we might have imagined. You likely won't be too surprised to hear that none other than Barack Obama came away with the gold. In fact, he won 2. He has nothing on Jimmy Carter though. Others may know Carter as history's greatest monster, thanks to The Simpsons. But whatever you think of the man, he has won not 1, not 2, but 3 Grammy Awards. The other president to win a Grammy, like Obama, has 2 of them. Not only has Bill Clinton won 2 Grammy Awards, his wife Hillary also has one, and she got hers way before him. Number 3, the smoking ban in England was considered from 1604 to 2007. Maybe not continuously, but the ban on smoking in England was not a new concept when New Labour introduced it in 2007. As far back as James I of England and VI of Scotland, there were people who were vehemently opposed to the habit of smoking, very much including the king himself. James even wrote a whole pamphlet, a counterbase to tobacco, denouncing smoking, tobacco, and Native Americans. They weren't a random inclusion, he blamed them for cursing Europe with the evils of tobacco. In the pamphlet, James even complained about passive smoking as well as the health issues it caused to those smoking and those around them. Number 2, historically, vibrators are one of the best-selling household appliances. Vibrators, in a historical context, seem like a very modern invention, but in terms of the history of electrical appliances, they were actually one of the first. Vibrators had a bizarre history from the very beginning, largely due to Victorians and their attitudes, of course, including the concept of hysteria. In this context, what doctors meant by hysteria was that a woman was horny, and to solve the problem, many doctors manually massaged the woman to get her relief and cure her hysteria. The problem with this being that it took ages a lot of the time, and one or both of the parties weren't too keen on it. From this predicament came many inventions, which of course was the Victorian way. These included steam-powered contraptions as well as hand-cranked tools. But towards the end of the 19th and at the beginning of the 20th century, some began to experiment with electrically powered apparatus. The result of this was the vibrator, which soon became a necessary household appliance. And not only was it one of the first popular appliances, it was also one of the most popular. Number 1, one of the biggest companies ever didn't actually exist. The South Sea Company is an example of how bad jumping on the bandwagon can be. The company advertised itself as a new East India Company, an entity which could only exist during colonial times. It promised to return riches which would be exploited from exotic lands in, you guessed it, the South Seas. Why was it such a risk to keep money in this venture? To put it simply, it didn't actually exist. It was basically an ingenious scam. That meant that the company just relied on pretend to generate money by selling shares. And for a while, this worked. Predictably, the bubble burst and the only legacy was some damaged British pride and a lesson about greed and finance. Of course, those lessons are still followed today. And that's our list. Are there any other historical facts you should know but probably don't that we missed? Let us know all about them in the comment section right down below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button. I've been Gareth from WhatCulture.com. Thank you as always for clicking on this today, and I'm sure I'll see you very, very soon. Bye-bye!